Every year, Hasbro, the maker of Marvel Legends, Transformers, G.I. Joe, and a bunch of other things, holds a crowdfunding effort for oversized toy projects that they could never reasonably try to sell at mainstream retail. They call these crowdfunded projects Haslabs, and the most recent Marvel Legends entry is a 24-inch Giant-Man figure. That Giant-Man Haslab finally funded 2 weeks ago, probably contrary to what most people expected it to do. And while I'm sure a lot of us are very thrilled by that as collectors, it might surprise some non-collectors to find out that not every Legends fan actually is. It might also surprise non-collectors that adult men are somehow very upset about their very expensive dolls and cars, something that the collector community really needs to reckon with, and this week, that's what I'm going to focus on. This week, we're talking about Giant-Man, the Hellcharger, and why Legends Haslabs come with well more than your recommended daily allowance of sodium. Buckle up. I'm Dan Umphin, and this is the Doomcast. First off, do me a favor, hit subscribe and the bell. I make about one of these videos a week. They're all great, so please don't miss even one. And hey, if you have thoughts, if you agree, you disagree, let me know in the comments. I'd like to hear it, but keep it civil. So Haslabs, like I say, ostensibly projects that are built and marketed to collectors that could never reasonably be brought to mass retail market because the price would be way too huge. The demand's simply too low because the appeal is pretty dang niche for a lot of these projects. Examples of past projects are the Katana Jabba the Hutt sail barge, that was the first Haslab, Unicron from the Transformers movie, Victory Saber, a G.I. Joe Sky Striker, a Cobra Hiss tank, 32-inch Sentinel, a 36-inch tall Galactus figure. So when I say big, I mean that these projects are huge. All of them were at a price point generally well above $100. Generally, they're about $200 to $400. Recently, the Ghost Haslab, the ship from Star Wars Rebels, was offered and funded at $500. These projects have a specified number of units that have to be sold at crowdfunding in order to move into production. If Hasbro's project doesn't reach the specified number of units, for example, 10,000 for Giant-Man at $199, the project does not go into production. Backers who bought in will not be charged. Hasbro is out their initial cost of development, design, marketing, modeling, etc. All of that overhead for the initial project is gone. A waste of money. However, if it does reach its unit requirement, the project goes into production, and additionally for these projects, if an additional number of units is pre-sold above the startup threshold, additional tiers are unlocked, which add value to the project. For example, Galactus had 3 additional figures that were unlocked at each different tier, adding about $75 in notional value to the project. If we figure, each figure would have been $25 at retail. Also, it came with a Dr. Doom head, which was a weird thing to unlock. Probably not worth 25 bucks, but all right. But the basics aren't why you're here. No, because you clicked, you probably get it. You probably understand how this stuff works because you likely are already a fan and already specifically interested in Marvel Legends, the Haslabs, probably in Giant-Man, and you probably already know that since the Hellcharger Haslab, something seemed to shift in the Marvel Legends fans around Haslabs, and it's created a certain toxicity a little bit in the community. The Hellcharger was possibly doomed from the very beginning, and I think the reason is much more complex than people realize or want to consider. However, it boils down to the very simple price point. Perceived value versus relative cost. And before I get into this though, I think it's worth noting that I don't work for, and I'm not sponsored by Hasbro. I'm also not defending them. They don't need defending. They're a multi-million-dollar corporation. But I also don't think that they need or are worth the ire or anger that some fans have specifically around this and other projects. It's just not worth being that upset about. But everybody's entitled to their opinion, and that's why we're on the internet. The Hellcharger, of course, was Robbie Reyes' Ghost Rider vehicle, a classic Dodge Charger, but from Hell and not cross-branded with Dodge, so they couldn't actually call it a Dodge Charger. The vehicle itself was 24 inches long, designed with 2 sets of wheels for street mode and Hellcharger mode, and then a Ghost Rider figure, then a bunch of effects which attached to the car's internal LED lights to give it a you know, hell feel to it. The original offer also included a Robbie Reyes figure with street clothes contingent on the project receiving its original 9,000 needed backers by September 23, 2022. Many fans originally balked at the price of the project, and not knowing what the tiers were, the price of $349 was steep, but it was still $50 less than the Galactus project from the prior year. But the economic conditions in fall of 2022 were arguably worse and very different in a lot of ways for a lot of people than fall of 2021, especially for your average working class collector. Still, the comparisons online, on Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, other vehicles specifically offered by McFarlane Toys and other vehicles offered by Hasbro, such as the His Tank, that summer as the G.I. Joe Haslab for about $50 left, just drew the ire of many fans. Some called it price gouging, some claimed it just wasn't worth it. Fans often argued based on comparisons of other vehicles that the car itself was only worth $100 to $150, and even with figures and tiers, the price was entirely too high. Others countered that the vehicle looked to be more detailed and weighty than similar offerings from competitors, including a variety of effects and so forth. And the possible tier figures like Madeline Pryor, Damien Hellstrom, and Mephisto if they reached the 14,000 backer tier. The project missed its funding goal on September the 23rd, missing that Robbie Reyes figure, the one in street clothes. The backer numbers started to go backwards instead of forwards for the first time in a Haslab that I remember seeing. And after 2 more months of pushing by Hasbro's marketing and 2 months of non-stop online bickering about the project, it ultimately did not reach its funding goal and ended up with just 56%. This year's project, the Haslab Giant-Man, drew automatic comparisons and seemed to reopen old wounds. While many fans, including myself, believe Hasbro's team learned some of the things that their fans wanted, it heard them, making the price point lower, not offering the vehicle, offering all of the tiers up front. With no early funding contingencies like a Robbie Reyes figure, many fans still felt a $200 24-inch figure with no additional 6-inch figure tiers was worth it. Even if Hank Pym is a more essential character, or at least relatively speaking, it seemed hopeless as old Giant-Man hovered around 50% funding until a nail-biting last day, in which a groundswell of support of last-minute backers put it over the funding goal and actually even unlocked that first tier of zombie accessories. Still, it feels like the acrimony around Giant-Man, sort of holdovers of anger around the Hellcharger, almost tanked this project. And that Hellcharger drew ire in a way that no other Haslab seems to have ever done, short of the Reva lightsaber. So a year later, I do want to go back and offer my thoughts as to why, and maybe how this will inform how Haslabs work going forward. First of all, as I mentioned up front, I'm not defending Hasbro, but here's some things that I think are relatively reasonable assumptions about Hasbro that I don't think all fans do make. First off, any Haslab will necessarily be a large single item. It won't be a wave of figures or a 5-pack or another item that could otherwise be normally retailed even if it's a specific exclusive release. It'll be a large single item. Second, that item will be both expensive but specifically geared towards collectors. Specifically, that means that the item will be niche but probably cost over $170, which is more than a wave of 6 6-inch figures. Third, there's an amount of sunk cost for Hasbro's team up front. They're putting money into this. Regardless of what you may think the price of an item should be, before the item license and before the other costs, I presume that Dan, Ryan, and Dwight aren't working for free. They're getting paid. The marketing material, mock-ups, design, all of that stuff costs money. I have no idea how much that is, but I assume that it's enough to incentivize point number 4, which is these items are priced to sell. They have to consider what people have paid in the past, can pay now, and what their base cost of materials and overhead and so forth is, and what their executive team wants out of that product. That's the way any product moves to market. If it's too low, the profit doesn't justify the expense of creation. If it's too high, they lose their upfront development cost. They're at risk on kind of both ends, right? Lastly, Dwight, Dan, and Ryan are working guys. They're real humans in real jobs who are just doing a job. One that they're passionate about, I think, but one that they also aren't balling out the mansion. Like, they aren't executives, and they don't have Hasbro board seats, and they aren't swimming in a Scrooge McDuck pile of cash in a money bin. I make those points because if you felt the Hellcharger was too expensive for what it offered, it is hard, in fact impossible, to argue with you. You might well be correct, but I do think truly that the development team priced it to sell based on what they offered and based on past Haslabs. I think personally the vehicle would have been a superior quality, detail, and accessories and electronics to anything that McFarlane or another figure company had offered at the time, or probably now, even at a lower price. You may not feel that it provided value, but value and the perception of value is subjective. That's what you feel it's worth paying. Cost is not. Cost is objective. And I think that while there's obviously a profitable markup on this or any other project, companies aren't charities. That markup wasn't as necessarily egregious as we probably have some of us thinking. Of course, there's no way to know objectively what the right cost or price would be because we can't compare it because nobody else produced a Hellcharger. Oh wait, somebody else did. The Ramen Racer. Ramen Toys made their own Hellcharger with similar accessories that could be purchased as add-ons. Granted, those accessories were not as expensive or as extensive as the Haslab, and it didn't involve any figures, but the original retail of the car itself was $250 plus 2-packs of accessories. That's $290, which is well over the estimate many people were expecting for a $100 to $150 car with such accessories. You're still in Hellcharger Haslab territory already if you figure that you're subtracting the cost of 4 figures. If that thing had funded fully, that's another $80 to $100 value. So here's where I want to go ahead and roll those of you who disagree with what I just said. That's cool. I might be wrong. I'm not in this kind of product development. I'm okay admitting that. The actual fair price could have been anything. Maybe I'm off by $50 to $100. I'll grant you that even, possibly. That's also fine, but if you're still truly upset at Hasbro, as upset as I still see some people who talk about this on Facebook and Reddit, taking it super personally at Dwight, Dan, and Ryan still a year later, respectfully, you need to chill the fuck out. I say this as a toy collector myself. If you're an adult man collecting toys, you probably have some degree of mental illness, okay? But that said, this is a hobby and these are toys. They aren't requirements. My groceries are like almost double what they were last year. Inflation is bad. It was already bad last year at this time, so we don't need a Hellcharger like we need food. But you definitely don't need something like this to actually anger you. I totally get disappointment. I was disappointed also that it cost so much, more so that it didn't fund. But also, we collect this stuff for fun. It should be fun. It shouldn't get you to a place where you're getting into arguments with complete strangers on boards about a toy car and whether or not Hasbro is a good company or a bad company. They're a company that's in it for profit, dude, just like and they always have been. Just like the one that you work for. They're all greedy. You don't need to defend them, but I also wouldn't let that fill your heart with anger and rage. If you're on the internet and getting into it with some rando over toys, dude, just log off. If someone is getting into it with you, instigating, don't even react. Just hit the block button, log off. Don't even reply. It's like Dan Yun says, Hakuna Matata. It's toys, and it's all love. No matter where you are politically, the world is on fire, and fandom can be an escape, and that's what it should be. We can't add the anger in the world needlessly being upset about toys. Way too much else real important going on. This Giant-Man figure also kind of frustrated some people, clearly. The idea that there were no figure tiers, especially with the obvious yellow jacket and wasp that could thematically accompany it, made some fans upset, but I think that this was done strategically to reduce FOMO and also to be totally upfront with what fans could expect to get, and also not have fans miss out on figures that they otherwise would never be able to get just because the Haslab didn't fund as many expressed last year, and it also reduces overall cost because designing accessories for one figure is probably a lot less costly than designing 2 additional figures or more that might never get produced, instead of offering those for retail normally. That said, I do have to speculate on future Haslabs. I think the team drew the correct conclusions that vehicles are very unlikely options. A Blackbird or Quinjet seems too large and impossible in 6-inch scale, regardless of how cool it actually sounds. But characters like fan favorites Fin Fang Foom or Celestial, those might work. And as much as I'd love to see that, or even playsets, possibly some that scale to popular displays like Detolf shelves, I don't actually think Marvel Legends necessarily needs a Haslab. I would love massively scaled figures, but there aren't a ton for them to do beyond what they've done. Giant-Man seems awesome, but Fin Fang Foom or like Exitar the Executioner, I don't know, what else do you do? I mean, there's almost just vehicles like the Fantastic Car, Punisher Van, Blackbird, or Quinjet, and I don't know how much any of those they could really do. But like one post on Reddit's Legends board mentioned, ironically, we could just break the cycle and be free. We could stop having them, and yeah, that would break the acrimony. Or, you know, as fans, we could just be better. It's for the fans, yeah, but they don't owe us anything, guys. We're all adults, and we can be better, but I'm guessing that the comments will probably prove me wrong on this video. Am I wrong? Am I right? Did you watch this whole dang thing up to this point? Because this is longer than I think I've ever done a Doomcast video. Regardless, let me know in the comments. And either way, thank you very much for watching. And if by any chance Dan, Ryan, or Dwight are watching or ever watch, thank you guys for coming up with cool shit and putting up with all of us, because you guys seem pretty chill and you guys put up with a lot and you guys do a great job. Hakuna Matata.